I want to start by saying to Alessia, thank you very much for organizing this event, and to the Chocolate Girl and everyone else that spoke and came here today. What a fantastic event. I think it's fantastic. So thank you, Alessia, for inviting me and organizing the event. As was mentioned, I've had a corporate business career, and through that whole process, I really came to the conclusion that it was all about the money and the guy at the front of the room that was important in business and entrepreneurship and economic development. And I embarked on doing a doctoral thesis, which is the stupidest thing I've ever done in my life, so don't do that, and wanted to study a lot about capitalism and economic development and entrepreneurship and all that kind of stuff. And I came to the conclusion through that whole process, one thing, that I was completely wrong. That it's not about what I just talked about, it's frankly about what the Chocolate Girl just talked about, and that's what I want to tell you a little bit about over the course of the next little while. A lot of you have probably read about, heard about, been at speeches about a whole bunch of people that are rethinking capitalism and rethinking economic development and entrepreneurship. And so to give you a little bit more of a sense, I work a fair amount in the pharmaceutical business and IT business. I'm now doing some sports stuff, and we talk about clusters and why clusters are so successful, and frankly meetings like today and other TEDx programs and other networking and speaking programs. And they're nothing about the money, and they're nothing about the guy at the front of the room. They're frankly about all of you and the interaction that takes place during the coffee hour and the session afterwards. And when you take a look at a lot of these different things that have been talked about, inclusive capitalism and conscious capitalism, things like that, really what they are all about is people actually creating those relationships, maybe not with language, but at least with relationships, where people actually want to interact together. And I don't have a lot of time today, but I want to leave you, without taking you through my whole thesis, 4 thoughts. And then I'm going to give you the 10 answers to those 4 thoughts. And so the first thought is there's something about ideas. And a lot of people have done a lot of research over the course of history, and they've come to the conclusion that it's not money, and it's not infrastructure, and it's not resources that are the key to success, it's ideas. Silicon Valley, ideas. Technology, ideas. Languages, ideas. There's something about ideas that end up being the key to success. That's thought 1. Thought 2 is there's something about cities. Ever since we stopped being hunters and gatherers and collected in villages and then got together in bigger villages and towns and cities, and you know it now today, if you want to make a lot of money, if you want to have big success, if you want to have innovation, you go to downtown Toronto, or you go to downtown New York, or you go to downtown London or Paris. There's something about cities. Thomas Flanagan, a famous author, wrote a big book called The World is Flat that said we can go everywhere. And you know this, with travel, with internet, we should be able to go anywhere and do business. But we don't. We get together in a few little cities. And Richard Florida wrote a response to that about a year later that said, no, the world's not flat, it's spiky, and it's getting spikier. And it's true. London, Paris, New York, incomes, average incomes, patents, innovation, jobs, job creation, etc. have all increased, while in the mid-sized cities, it's decreased. Positive stuff comes with those, but also negative stuff, crime, garbage, climate change, etc. So both good and bad come from cities. But idea number 2 is there's something about cities, and the key is connectivity. It was mentioned I'm chair of Transit Alliance, which is all about transit connectivity, but it's more than transit connectivity. It's about the connection between all of us. So that's thought 2. Thought 3 is that those ideas and that connectivity have got to be between people. It's not just that they happen, and it's not just that you got good roads, it's that there's this intimate connectivity. And there was this great study done called The Geography of Genius, and it went through a whole history of different cities that have been incredibly successful developing geniuses or very successful cities. And it's interesting because what they found is that when different people of different cultures, languages, etc., often religions, interact in a very intimate way, that's when you get the best success. And what they call is intimate cerebral exchange. Someone else came to me with another study that said really what it is idea sex. It's ideas getting together and mutating, reproducing, getting along really well together and fermenting and creating other ideas. And the best example of this is Edinburgh. Edinburgh in the 1800s was the place where economics took hold and political science and things like that went off like crazy. And what it was every Thursday night they had, I apologize, it was a men's club, but a club that got together, and you had to do two things. You had to argue incessantly with other people, but then you had to socialize and get drunk and have beers with them. And there's something about the being able to not just talk, but actually discuss in a very intense way, but not do it in a way where you don't like the person anymore. You still want to have drinks with them and have a good time. And those clubs ended up being incredibly successful. The other example they gave is Vienna, where you had psychology, sociology, and music at its forefront. And that was the only time in Austrian history that the Jews and the Austrians got along really well together. So when the different ethnic religious groups actually interacted well, that was the time of the great flourishing. So idea number 3 is that there's something about doing it together. And then idea number 4 is completely consistent with what Alessia's theme today is about, is bridges. And what changed it all for me was doing all this research on economic development and entrepreneurship, was reading a book, reading an article, and if you don't listen to anything else that I say today, listen to this, please. A preeminent article written about 25 years ago by the name of Mark Granovator called The Strength of Weak Links. And what it was he said, it's actually not the really close relationships that you have that are going to be your key to success in life. It's the weak relationships. He actually called it the bridging relationships, not the bonding relationships. It's those people that are friends of friends, because that's where ideas come, from resources come. Actually, most people get their dates and mates from the friends of friends. It's the associates. So idea number 1, ideas. Number 2, it's in cities. Number 3, it's intimate exchange. And then number 4, that it's all about getting together in an intense, weak relationship and have that group. So I sat down with my thesis advisory group and I shared this with them, and I told them that the key was social capital. It wasn't financial capital, it wasn't physical capital, it was social capital. They said, Brian, you've got the business experience, the political experience, the civic experience to actually give us the how-to book on how we create social capital, because lots of people know what it is, but they don't know how to create it. And really what people have done over the course of the last decade is they've added social capital as one of those things, along with physical capital and financial capital and maybe human capital, that are the keys to success. So your question might be, okay, fine, Brian, we need to be the chocolate girl, but we don't speak 5 languages, so we can't create those relationships that she was talking about. How do we actually create these relationships that are going to be the key to success? So quickly, I'm going to go through my 10 powers of co, and it comes from the Latin prefix co, which means with or together. And there's a whole bunch of words that take other words that you use on a frequent basis, but change them slightly, if not frankly dramatically, and make that word a far more important word. I'll give you an example. Think about a focused strategy. A focused strategy is often thought of as good, but a focused strategy could just be it's one. But a cohesive strategy is one that fits together. And so cohesive, I would argue, is far stronger than focus. So number 1 is connections. And I talked about those strong connections, but focus on the weaker connections, the friends of friends, the associates, whether it's Facebook or LinkedIn or Christmas cards or whatever it is you do, people that meet today. Learn how to make and build your network of connections that are the bridging connections, the weaker connections, to the Muslim people, to the people of different color, to the people of different ethnicities, to the people of different functional areas. And there's been a lot of studies that show that the banker that has the relationships with the most people in other departments actually makes the biggest bonuses. The real estate agents that knows people in different geographies makes the biggest commissions. In occupation after occupation, if you want to be successful, don't be myopic and only know the people in your own functional area. And don't only know the people that look like you and talk like you. Be the person that knows people that speak differently, pray differently, and look differently. So that's number 1. Number 2 is have a conversation. And I love this. 80% of the people say they don't want to have a conversation. They don't want to have a PowerPoint. They want to have a conversation, which is ironic given that I'm giving you a PowerPoint. But talk to people. And, it's interesting. They say that more deals get done in the coffee shops on the main floors than the boardrooms on the top floors. And it's true. Why? Because when you have a conversation with people, you talk about what their dreams are, what their aspirations are, how many kids they have, what they want to achieve in life. And you actually can get to something in the end. And if you go to Webster's Dictionary, do it on your phone now. Maybe not now, maybe later. But look up conversation. What it's called? Personal social intercourse. Think about how how intimate a conversation is going to be if it's going to be called social intercourse. It's not a gossip. It's not a gab fest. It's not a how's the weather, what do you think about the Blue Jays, right? It's something where you actually share with people what things are about. So have conversations. And then, it's obvious, but it's communication. And think about communication. The suggestion that I got from one person, a guy I worked for, Jim Pattison, who used to say all the time, Brian, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a good reason. We should talk 1/2 as often as we listen. Then someone came up to me after a session like this and said, you got it all wrong, Brian. God gave us a mouth that can close and ears that never close. Think about that just for a second. And then it's cooperation and collaboration and compromise and these are words that we think about, but it's key. And this came home to me better than almost anything else last week at church, and then Tuesday at breakfast. And I'll give you two quick stories to the stories we heard earlier. Have you ever heard the story about the sun and the wind? The sun and the wind were arguing one day about who was more powerful. And the wind said, I'm more powerful, for sure. And they said, okay, you see that person walking across the desert? Get that person to get the coat off that person. And so what did the wind do? Blew and flew and windstorm and massive stuff and sand whipping into the face. And what did the person do? Held on to his coat even tighter. So the wind gave up and the sun said, it's my turn. The sun, what did that sun do? The sun came out and made it a beautiful sunny day. What did the person do? Took coat off of his own free will. So who's stronger, the sun or the wind? And then Tuesday, fascinating, I told this story and the guy said, I got a better one for you. My kids are Olympic whitewater canoeists. And the coach to the whitewater canoeists said, when you're whitewater canoeing, you don't fight the river, you go with the river. And the river can take you where you want to go. You just have to steer yourself a little bit. But go with the river, don't fight it. So think about cooperation, compromise. It is far more powerful than being oppositional. And then you got confidence. And I think this is so key. And confidence is one of those things that you got to have. And it's interesting. Confidence, prove that it's with or together, because if you have confidence in yourself, it's actually called self-confidence. So confidence is something that you have all together. And I'm not sure if I got enough time, but I want to prove you one thing that really works. I want you to all stand up really quickly. And I don't know if any of you do yoga, but I want you to all do a yoga move with me. Put your left foot perpendicular, put your right foot straight ahead in the opposite direction, and do warrior 2. Lean forward and put your hand straight to me and think about electricity coming through your body, coming straight to me or whoever it's pointing at to give them power. If I did a survey of 1,000 Stanford undergrads and they did that pose for 1 minute versus another bunch that didn't do it, do you think there'd be a difference in their ability to get a bonus, get a job, get an employment opportunity? Absolutely, a statistical difference. If you do something, and the one thing that's interesting is we train our females, and this is primarily a women's event, we train our females to look weak. We have them cross their legs, we make them small, we give them heels so they can't stand straight. And I tell you, what it is, it's interesting. Up till the age of 12, people can't tell the difference between a figure of a male or a female. After the age of 12, they will take a look at a weak-looking person and say, a stick person, say that's female, a strong person, say that's male. We've trained our people to think that way. So I tell you one other thing. Stand up real quick again, please. I want you to all give me Wonder Woman. You do Wonder Woman before you go into your next meeting or your networking session or something like that. And I take 1,000 Stanford undergrads and do a statistical sample and ask them if they can get a bonus or get a date or get a job. Do you think there'd be a difference? You do Wonder Woman for 30 seconds in the washroom before you go to your next meeting, you will be more successful. Okay? You will, I promise. Confidence. Okay, you can sit down. And then it's commitment. And this came to me more than anything else on my daughter's dance studios. They said, amateurs practice till they get it right. Professionals practice till they can't get it wrong. Compassion, understanding, sympathy. You can look at someone and not do a thing. Or charity, you can look at someone and say, here's $1 to go get a coffee. Or even empathy, where you feel for their pain and not do anything. But compassion is something far more. People say compassion is a verb. And it's interesting. I made this speech at a church, and this guy that was a Greek scholar came up and said, Brian, you got it all wrong. because the Latin co has another prefix that's com, C-O-M. And the com means with or together so intimately you're almost joined as another person. So co is with someone, com is actually joined with another person. And therefore the Latin definition of compassion is having a passion to be with another person. If you have a passion to be with and feel for another person, you cannot watch them suffer without doing something. And so, I think the other thing about compassion is compassion's a muscle. Once you start doing it a little bit, you will be compelled to do it more. And that's why people talk about, doing a good deed of the day. And some of you will laugh at those Facebook messages that say do that. I tell you, you do it once, it feels so good. It's like your serotonin from chocolate. You do it once, and you'll want to do it again and again and again. So practice compassion on a fairly regular basis. So what have we talked about? We talked about connections and conversations and communication and cooperation and collaboration and commitment and courage. I think I've missed one. And compassion. What do you think's left? We got two more. Competition. It's a bad word for some people, but in the end, it ends up being key. And this is a picture of my son. Until my son beat me in the 10K, I wasn't going to finish. When he passed me on that 10K, I wanted to do it. So competition can be friendly, but there is something about competition. There's something about soccer teams that play each other. There's something about wanting to be I'm chair of the Mississauga Arts Council. There's something about even artists that want to win the Marty. They want to win the award. Competition ends up meaning you'll be the best person that you can be. And what is it? It's because we want to interact with other people, but we also want to achieve with other people. And we want to have that friendly competition. And the key here, I think, is something that, frankly, our Prime Minister said, is that we compete, but we're never enemies. So we can compete and we can compete hard, but we never take us so far to become enemies. And then what's the last one? You're probably surprised by this, but I think it's really key, and it's what is open for you today, if you take it, if you want. And that is the power of coincidences. Paulo Coelho in the book The Alchemist said, the universe is there if you try hard enough to show you where your destiny is. You will bump into someone today that can change, if not your life, at least something to do with your life. The people that you meet in a bar, in a restaurant. I had someone that was interested in being in the fashion business. She went to New York and she went into her favorite dress shop, DVF or something like that, Diane Van Furstenberg, that did these wrap dresses. And she went in and she tried something on and she came out, and who came down the stairs, told her she looked beautiful, and adjusted it? Diane Van Furstenberg. Is that chance? Or is that God or nature or coincidence, or is it the universe? I want to be a merchant banker. If I sat at an airport lounge and Warren Buffett came and sat beside me, is that chance or is that an incredible opportunity? Today, someone in this audience is an incredible opportunity. It's up to you to find them. The majority of you will only talk with the people you came with, the people you know. That is the biggest mistake that you can make. Too much and too long, we've surrendered our community excellence and community values in the mere accumulation of material things, said Robert Kennedy. Margaret Mead, never doubt that a small group of people can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that can. Together, if we practice these 10 codes, and if we actually get together as a community and we connect with one another, whether it be through language or other things, you can actually change this world for the better. And you can do better as an entrepreneur, and you can do better from an economic development standpoint. So practice the 10 codes, and I think you'll be more successful. Thank you very much.